Be bold. Be heard. Welcome to Unmute Your Mic with your host, Jessica Bell. The views, information, or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Unmute Your Mic.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unmute Your Mic. My name is Jessica Bell. I am your host from Kansas City, Missouri. If this is your first time tuning in, thank you for joining us. If you are returning, thank you for being a part of the Unmute Your Mic family. Before we get started, I would love to ask you to please like, subscribe, and follow on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, anywhere that you can find a podcast. I'm super excited for our conversation today and for our guest, Jamal. Jamal, thank you so much for agreeing to be on my podcast. If you could just introduce yourself and let us know a little bit more about you.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for allowing me to be on. My name is Jamal Maxsam. I'm an igniter of champion leaders. I help aspiring school leaders make that shift by stepping out of the classroom and stepping into school leadership. What I like to say is I help them answer the call to leadership and lead like a champion. And so I'm a former teacher. I've taught in urban districts, school districts for a number of years prior to answering the call myself and stepping into school leadership, where I led in charter and traditional public, was known for turning around schools, and schools that were already performing, I was known for accelerating their progress. And so now that's what I do full time with my own business. I have the honor of working with these aspiring leaders and really helping them put everything together that they've learned in the principal prep program, combining it with stuff that they may not have learned in the principal prep program. And so I'm just great to be here. I'm honored to be here. It's great to be here and be in the conversation with you.
Well, I'm super excited about this conversation because I am a teacher myself. So this is awesome.
All right.
Yes. So I'm super excited. And if you could just tell us a little bit more of your backstory. How did you get started in this, just teaching and then deciding to take it, a step further? What did that look like for you?
Well, actually starting teaching, because teaching wasn't my first career. It wasn't my career choice. I went to school for business. I got my first leadership position at 16 years old. So I was still a high school kid and was managing a fast food restaurant. So imagine that. And then read my first leadership book at 17. It was John Maxwell, Developing the Leader Within You. And ever since then, I kept reading leadership books and studying leadership. So I went to school for business management because I always knew that I was destined to own my own business, but I just didn't know what it was going to look like. At the time, I thought it was going to be a music business. And so I was reading books about the music business and, because I'm a musician as well. So I was, doing music all over the place and, just immersing myself in that world. And so I went to school for business. And just like any college kid, you get out, you get a position. And I was working at this marketing company that, they were working with General Motors and specifically the Chrysler division. So when you would look at their pamphlet and if you had a question about the product, you would call this number and they would call our company, and we had the call center and a fulfillment center where we would send stuff out. Now, at the time, the operation didn't seem, I always wondered why that business was successful, to be honest, because the internet was alive and well. And I'm like, they could just Google it. and so I was there and it was boring. Just being real. It was boring. It wasn't exciting. It was, even though I was answering people's questions and I loved talking to people, but I didn't feel like I was helping anybody. And so I transitioned out of that thinking I could help people by getting into law enforcement because the pastor of the church I was attending at the time, he was a detective. So he was like, why don't you just apply for law enforcement and go through the academy and blah, blah, blah. So I did that. I was on the road for went through the academy, passed it, won the top of the class. was on the road for about a year. And I would tell you, I had a love-dislike relationship. It was super exciting where I was patrolling because it was the city I grew up in, just outside of Detroit. And we were in car chases every week. I mean, literally, we were in a car chase on ice. I mean, which that one was scary. And so, but I found, and I wasn't popular on the police force because I found the people we were arresting were young children. They were like high school kids or fresh out of high school where they should be college age. And law enforcement is very reactive. It's okay, you did this. The law is this. You got to come. You know what I'm saying? And for me, I was too busy trying to talk sense into them. You know, at 2 a.m, we, arresting a kid. I'm like, boy, where's your mama? Where are you at? Why aren't you at home? That kind of thing, and so why you out here? And so that wasn't very popular with the style of policing that's the city did. And so I found that wasn't the place for me because I wanted to be more proactive and I wanted to help people live up to their full potential and help them learn how to think to make good decisions. So that led me to education. And once I went back to school, got my education degree, and the minute I got the degree, an opportunity opened up for me in Cincinnati. And that's what really got me where I am and started me along my path to educational leadership.
I love that. So you've had many different careers and many different things that you've been a part of, but I kind of like how you almost started as you were doing different stuff, you were going backwards in a sense. Like you were like, okay, now I see I want to help the kids, but I don't want to catch them when they're getting arrested. I want to catch them before they get there. And so really trying to see how you can impact them earlier on in their life before it gets to the point where maybe they would come in contact with the police officer. And so once you decided that you said, okay, I'm going to be a teacher, how did you go from I'm going to teach to now I'm going to actually help teachers in a sense?
Yeah. Well, it kind of fell on me because initially I wanted to work with junior high kids because as I was going through the principal prep program, I noticed that was a group nobody wanted. Just being real. Everybody wanted to work with high schoolers because, they're so mature. You can do so many things with them. Or they wanted the babies. Oh, they're so cute. That kind of thing. But those junior high age kids that are going through puberty, that's going to talk back to you because they're feeling themselves. Nobody wanted them. But I figured out that was the time they needed the most support. And that was the group I wanted. And so when I started working at this K-8 charter school, I recognized, man, these little ones need me too. They had just as many issues. They had second graders were tripping out. I mean, I was like, what's wrong with you? And so I started, just doing what I did to serve. And because I always want to help people, I became the team leader of what's called, you're an educator, you already know, they call the specials team, which is the team of, the music teacher, the art teacher, the PE teacher. And I was teaching technology. And then we also had a library teacher. And so I ended up just by default, because of how I act and how I treated them and how I advocated for them and tried to make sure our squad ran good. I became the team leader. Then after doing that, I started taking on more responsibility, like leading lunch duties and things like that. When people didn't want to do lunch duty, I was cool because I was in there, with the kids and leading it, helping the monitors, make sure everything was good. And then finally, it just hit me. It was like one day I was in my classroom and, by this time I had stopped teaching technology and the direction of the school had kind of shifted with my content, which at first I didn't like. I was like, what do you mean I can't teach technology? These kids need to know how to use a computer, and so, but they shifted me to supervising a school-wide computer-based intervention where it was reading and math. And I had 60 students in the classroom at one time. I had an assistant as well to help with that. But they would they would work on a computer, have individual learning paths, and half the room was on math, the other half was on reading. And I would teach a mini lesson, and I kind of focused on the math because my assistant was stronger in reading and ELA. And so I would teach the mini lesson, and then they would work on the computer, and the software would flag me if they're struggling, or I would watch their progress, and I would pull them up to me and work with them one-on-one. And we did this for students that were below proficiency. And so in order to get back to special, they had to test out of my class. So I had to learn how to motivate them and keep them engaged and really teach them, work with them one-on-one. And because of that role, I began to take on more of a leadership role within the school building itself. I became the school-wide testing coordinator for a progress monitoring assessment that we did called NWEA MAP. You're probably familiar with it. And so just after that, it just hit me one day. It just really, and I don't even know what exactly it was. It was just like something hit me. It was like, I can do more. I can make a greater impact. And it was almost like an itch. It was like, I need to be in school leadership. I need to jump in and lead. And it was funny, the minute right after I thought that, I recognized, okay, the building principal that I was serving under at that time didn't have the capacity, I don't want to say skill wise, but emotional capacity to mentor or train anybody, because I watched him not really accept mentoring from someone who turned around in school, who was coming from Michigan to mentor him, and that person who was coming from Michigan, I knew because I used to work at his school as a substitute while I was getting my teaching certificate. And so I'm like, this dude you should listen. But I knew he wasn't listening, and I could tell that there were some insecurities there because he was trying to compete to prove his worth. And so I knew he didn't have the capacity to help me. And so, but the minute I said, okay, yeah, I'm going to become a school leader, the principal at our sister school, which was across town, happened to be in the building, but I don't believe it was happenstance. He was in the building talking to me, and I mentioned to him, I was like, I'm interested in school leadership. From that point on, he started giving me Educational Leader magazine and started really teaching me stuff. And then the next year, he became the principal at the school where I was working. And then he started including me on leadership meetings. He was like, you can come in, but this course, you can't say anything about what we talk about. And I was like, look, I don't have to say nothing in the meeting. I'm going to just take notes and watch and learn. And it just started from there. It was just this ultimate desire to have a greater impact, because I figured I was helping the entire school because I saw every kid in the school, and I was especially the struggling ones. But I thought, how many more kids could I help if I helped the teachers? If I help the people who are helping the people, that would increase my impact, and not just my impact as an individual, but it'll increase the impact that we could have as a school. Because if I could help them increase their capacity, then they could do what they needed to do better. And that was basically it. That's what got me into school leadership.
Wow. And so essentially you duplicated yourself, right? I mean, you basically are teaching people what you know. And so that way your reach is much bigger than what you could do by yourself, because you are only one person. So There's only so many people or so many kids you can have in the classroom. And, you can't go to multiple cities and be in multiple places at once. So was it like a program that you've created? Is it a training? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, but let me touch on the duplicate yourself, because it wasn't really about duplicating myself. It was about increasing the impact and the effectiveness, because I truly believe that no one in leadership position, period, should try to duplicate themselves, even though that's a common thing. And I understand the thought process behind it. But one of the things that I share is that instead of duplicating yourself, you want to develop extensions of your leadership, which is different, because you want to help people step into who they are as a leader and allow them to be them, and lead from their authentic place, which sounds very fluffy, but you have to be authentic in leadership in order for people to connect with you. Because if you're trying too hard, it's not going to work. I made that mistake. And so they have to be true to who they are, be okay with who they are at the moment in time that they are in while growing as a leader. So the whole point is to have what I call a dream team, where you have people stepping into their strengths and learning to lead, and then being extensions of the leadership of the school. And so that's what I had to do. And I really didn't step into that place until I began to lead. I became the principal of a larger school. We were servicing 950 students. There were 100, in school, we call them staff members, but 100 adults, employees in the building. It would take me a month to do a 15-minute walkthrough of every single classroom. And so I recognized, in a smaller school, I was everywhere every day. But I recognized in this big school, there would be days where people didn't see me. I had 6th grade teachers one day say, "Hey, we missed you. Haven't seen you in the past couple of days." I was down there with kindergarten, so it was one of those things where I had to teach those grade level leaders how to lead so they could be extensions of leadership for the school. And that way, as I was making my way around and trying to be as visible as possible, there wouldn't be any feeling of not having support or not having a leader. And so, and I learned that when I became the principal of this larger school, very quickly. And I was like, I need to teach these folks some leadership. So once a month, the school leadership team, I was teaching them leadership. We did a book study on From Good to Great. And, I started teaching them basic leadership principles, which is funny because I got some pushback from it. Central office was great, but some of the people involved wanted to, push back at first. They didn't understand. And so, which was a head scratcher on one hand. And I saw it as a challenge on the other to better articulate the why for this content.
That's good. And so what did you start noticing would change in the school as you were teaching leadership? Because I feel like that is often kind of missed when we have these like staff meetings and everything else. We're so often talking about, what needs to be fixed or how do we handle this problem? But I know personally, we don't have a whole lot of like, let me just train you how to be an effective leader first. So when you started doing that, what did you start noticing was shifting in the school?
Well, first, there was challenges because just like you said, there wasn't a lot of it. And in the district I was working in at the time, there was none of it. And so what I was bringing was brand new. A lot of people want to be trailblazers and they love that title. Oh, I'm a trailblazer. But blazing a trail can be challenging because you got to be the one to pull up the weeds and clear the path for the next person. And so I dealt with people wanting to focus on curriculum and instruction, assessment, classroom management. Even my assistant principal at the time, he spoke up in one of the meetings and was like, I don't understand why we're learning this. I want to be able, and he quoted Brian Midler a lot. And he was like, I just want to help these teachers learn how to take some of the rocks out of their bag to make it easier for them. And so I had to really paint the picture. Even though we're dealing with curriculum instruction and children, we're still dealing with adults in the meantime. And we have to learn how to lead these adults because leadership is this. Leadership is influence based on what John Maxwell says. But Jamal Maxsam says it this way. Leadership is influencing people to take action. So if I'm going to influence you, it's going to be to take action to accomplish the vision. Because I'm dealing with 100 adults, I need to know how to connect with these people because leadership is influence to take action. People will not take action if you don't influence them, and you can't influence them if they don't feel connected to you. And so I was like, I need to learn how to build this connection so they can buy into what we need done for these kids. And so initially there was pushback. There were teachers there were teacher leaders saying, I didn't go into business. I went into education. I don't want to learn this. And part of the dynamic was this particular school was the top performing school in the district. Now, it became that before I got there, because the previous principal put a lot of work in. And I mean, she did a lot. And it's so funny, the things she was doing at that school, I was doing at a different school. So when I got there, I was like, oh, this is great. Because I felt like I didn't have to do, I didn't have to, for once, I didn't have to turn something around. It was already going. And so it was some of that thought of the best PD is down the hall. Why do we need to change if things are going better? I'm like, well, if the best PD is down the hall, I was like, I'm not shorting anybody's skills. I believe you're all skilled and you're doing great, and something you're strong in, you're definitely going to teach and present to the rest of the teachers. However, if that's all we have, then we are still 2 years behind where the state of Ohio says we need to be. That's all we will ever be. And so that's why I chose the book From Good to Great, because that book talks about organizations where things were going good and they had to make a shift at a pivotal moment to step into greatness. And so I had to explain that a lot. But once they got it, I started to see some difference. Now it's different because, teacher folk, they're used to being the content experts. So I had one grade level leader who thought her team was jealous of her skills because she taught so well. And I was like, no, it's not your skills. I was like, I'm sorry to tell you, you're just not connecting. You haven't influenced them. You haven't gained permission from them for you to lead them. Basically, you seem stuck up to them, and so they're not feeling you, but I had another one bought into the content, and she was everywhere. I mean, she was awesome. So the performance began to increase because I had people leading. I had people taking more of a leadership role. I had people organizing stuff. My wife says I say stuff too much. Organizing initiatives and other programs and taking the leadership role. And what I found for me is that it made what I did a lot easier, because I didn't have to try to solve every problem, or I didn't really have to be involved in everything. The only thing I did, though, because there's a difference between micromanaging and being micro-informed, I said, just keep me aware of what you're doing. Because if someone asks me a question, I want to be able to answer. Or I don't need to try to have all the details. I just need to have enough to answer the question. And if they need more information, I can point them to you. But I don't want to hear about something for the first time from somebody else, because I'm like, that's not good. And so, but things started really flowing at a higher level and I would say this, with the group that was not resisting, with the adopters, the early and the, adopters. Now you had some that were resisting because they were, and in my opinion, they were comfortable and they didn't feel like they should have to do anymore. And, I had people asking me, well, we want to grow kids. And I said, okay, by how much? We just want them to grow. How much? Let's put a percentage number on that. Because that way every kid will know how much they should grow by the end of the school year, so that kind of thing. Or I would challenge, I even challenged our school psychologist a couple of times, because she would tell me she never evaluated a kid that she didn't intend to recommend for an IEP. And I said, well, that's wrong. I was like, that's why our district has more students on IEP than the state average. I'm like, that's a problem. And I said, but I saw it as a lack of knowledge. So I tried to help her. I was like, look, some of these things that you're saying needs to be done by a special educator are actually best practices that can be done in a classroom. Why put another kid on somebody's caseload and putting a burden on the whole district? Because, you can only have so many students on a caseload when we can just do these other practices. So it became, it accelerated for some, and for others, it was a constant eyesore for them, or a constant source of irritation, because It's like the thing was moving and they were trying to do like the Flintstones and put their feet down to stop it from moving. And so that was the impact I had at that particular building.
Wow. And that was just at that building. So I can imagine how much impact it had. But I love hearing that because I like that you said, sometimes people are comfortable, so they don't want to change. And it's not even that what is being presented is not a good change. It's just like, no, I'm okay with how we do it. I don't want to have to shift. I may not want to learn anything new. So I think that was a great point, because often we can find ourselves just sitting in a comfortable place when we do need to grow and learn more. But that kind of us being comfortable in everything, doing everything as usual. A lot of people don't benefit from that. And especially when you are an educator, it is a constant learning process. You are never just like, okay, I'm done. I'm the best teacher ever. And that's the end of the story. Because every child is different. So every method that you use is also going to be different. And so this has been such a good conversation. I don't even want to wrap it up, but I was going to ask you, are you still in schools, or now are you full-time doing the training?
I am full-time doing my training, and that is definitely another episode. But to give the quick 2-minute version, I was asked to be on special assignment, which meant they pulled me out of the school that I was leading, which was that school I just told you about. And they assigned me to the junior senior high campus because they had this big thing that they did where they combined campuses. I have no idea why. So you had this humongous building serving like 2,100 students. And one half of the building was dedicated to 7th and 8th graders. Then the other half was 9 through 12. So they had an assistant principal and who had an assistant. Well, they had a principal of the junior high and an assistant. Then the high school had several assistants. And then they had what they called a campus principal. Now, this school had turnover every year for the past 10 years, except for this one particular year. The guy says, okay, I'll come back for year 2. But with that, they wanted to give him some more supports. And because they knew my track record, and I'm a guy who I'm extremely strategic. And so the first thing they said to me, now this is a month into school. I had already cast a vision for the year, and we had done what I call culture camp. We were about to had just started, or we're in the middle of baseline testing, for the beginning of the year to see where they were, how we do. And the superintendent and the assistant superintendent come to me and say they want me to work on a project. They pulled me out the building and they said, we know your strengths. We seen your whiteboard. We see how you plan. Because my whole wall in my office, one of them was like a gigantic whiteboard. And so folks was tripping when I had that installed. It was like, oh my God. And so they moved me to support him. And what ended up happening is, so I supported him, but I wasn't doing what principals do. I wasn't evaluating teachers. I was clearly helping to facilitate initiatives based on a school improvement grant that the high school received. So I was always in meetings or dealing with vendors, or when I did work directly with teachers, it was to help them learn how to do whatever it is we were asking them to do. So I did that. And then in January, they were like, this is great. The team up here loves you. You want to stay here or go back to the elementary school, but we think you will be a better fit here because we don't want to rock the boat with the other school. I was like, okay, but let me think about it because, I can win anybody over a period of time because I figured like I'm going to wear you down. I'm going to treat you so good. I'm going to love on you. I'm going to be my passion is just going to be contagious. Either that or you're just going to leave 1 of the 2. And so I was like, well, let me think about it. That was January. February, this big House bill passes and it was a very big deal. Many districts spoke out against it. Where it was a school choice House bill. Now, being in charter and traditional public, I saw both sides of that coin. But the problem is they were trying to get funding to charter by taking it away from traditional public. And we all were like, that's not the answer. You're going to create a problem by trying to solve a problem. And so they passed it the way they did. And so which meant the district lost $500,000. And guess where they had to make cuts? They're definitely not cutting teachers. They're not cutting principals. They're cutting district level admin where they can. Our district was very admin heavy with central office personnel. And now I'm lumped in that number. And one of the blessings of performing well is your pay follows you. So, and one of the challenges with that is when people are looking at numbers, seeing where they could cut to save money, so February, they come back and tell me my position was eliminated. And then March, the pandemic hit and there was shutdowns. So, of course, I helped the high school make that transition of getting everybody to online because we were already 1-to-1. But I had a choice. At that point, I didn't have a choice because nobody in the state was hiring because the whole state was impacted. And at that point, I had to make a decision. What am I going to do? And how do I keep myself from ever being in this position again while still doing what I know I'm purposed to do? And so I decided to launch this business. And then things started getting better and, funds started coming back in. And these restart funds were talked about. And there were a few districts before the restart funds were released that people were quitting and resigning. And so folks was calling me, was like, hey, this district is looking for principals or this district. But by then, I had already made the decision and the commitment because I thought this way. I could use my resume and try to work to get my resume in front of the right people so they could see it out of all these hundreds of applicants. Or I could take what I have learned, package it, and use that same effort and energy to get it in front of almost the same people to be contracted in to do the work as my own boss. And I said, you know what? In this season of my life, I believe that's what I'm supposed to be doing because now I can help more than one district. I can help multiple and not just in one state, multiple states. And so that's what led me to where I am now.
That is so good because I feel like when the pandemic kind of hit, there were a lot of people who stepped into these, like, I need to be my own boss because it showed us just how quickly we can go from making $100,000 to not having a job.
That was me exactly.
Yeah. Because we're not in control of it when we're working for somebody else. And so when money's cut, when the pandemic hits, then everything's on the line. But if it's something that you own, you can shapeshift and repackage it and say, hey, I'm going to do this virtually or whatever it is that you want to do. And there's there's just something so beautiful about having the power to control your time and control your money and still be able to walk in your purpose and in your calling. And I think that is awesome because so many people need to hear that, hey, even if it seems like, man, what am I going to do? You still have the skills and your talents, even if you're not working for somebody else. And you basically spent all the things that you had learned and were able to do working for somebody else. Why would you not be able to then do it as your own business and get, like you said, being a contractor? And so we're a little over, but this is a good conversation. I did just want to ask you if somebody is in the school and they want to reach out to you, contact you, learn more about your program or your training, how can they do so?
They can go to my website and it's very simple. It's jamalmaxsam.org. And they can go to my website, see all of my information, contact me. I do complimentary, some people call them discovery calls. I just say time with me where we'll talk so I can get to know exactly what the person is dealing with and what their challenges are. And they can follow me on almost every social media platform. I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Clubhouse. I host discussions on Clubhouse almost 4 days a week. I'm in somebody's room, or I have my own room that I run every week as well, called the Principal's Office, where we talk all things school leadership. And so just reach out to me. I am, this is my life's work, my mission, my legacy, my assignment is to ignite people's leadership. And so, yeah.
That is awesome. And thank you for the work that you do. Because so often there are a lot of like self-help coaches and that kind of thing, which is awesome. But I love that you have kind of narrowed it down to educators. And so you have that specific lane of people, because we are often looking for resources and other ways to learn and grow. And you're taking a different approach that I think is really going to be beneficial. So I'm so happy that I got to meet you and learn a little bit about your story. And I would love to have you come back to talk a little bit deeper about what it is that you do and how you do it, and get some people connected with you, because I know that there are so many educators and even, principals and people who are in schools that are like, I need something. And sometimes we don't even know what it is, but we know that it's something different. And so I thank you so much for what you do. And if you are all watching us on YouTube or Facebook Live, all of Jamal's information is going to be down below. Please stay connected with him. Follow him on all his social media platforms. And if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, you can go to unmuteyourmic.org. There you will see our show notes. You'll learn a little bit more about Jamal. Also, all the ways that you can contact him. Thank you so much, Jamal. It has been a true pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you, Jessica. It was an honor to be on and to talk to the listeners.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for listening to another episode of Unmute Your Mic. As always, you can like, subscribe, and follow on YouTube, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Thank you for listening to another episode of Unmute Your Mic. Don't forget to be bold, be heard, and continue to unmute your mic. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jamal.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Unmute Your Mic. Be sure to tune in next time when Jessica takes her mic off mute as she continues her journey to find stories that inspire and uplift our community.